So let me recap 1 Samuel. I'm going to look at chapters 4 through 10 to get us caught up to tonight. I also lost a contact during worship, so now I got to go like one eye. So if I look like a pirate I know, it's so bad. What's that? I worship too hard, okay? It happens. All right. So looking ahead to this, we are at a point where we talked about last week where Samuel was a young boy dedicated to the Lord and given to service to the priest Eli. Eli had two terrible sons, deplorable sons. They would do evil things. But Samuel served diligently this master. Now, as time goes by, Eli becomes very old, and Samuel gets this word from the Lord. And in this word that he receives in the middle of the night, learning God's voice for the first time, he has to pronounce a judgment against his mentor. Talk about like a terrifying thing to do. He has to pronounce judgment not only against him, but his sons about an untimely death and some essentially God's hand against them. We keep fast forwarding, and then now Samuel, in this conversation with God later, God essentially tells Samuel, the people's cries have made its way to my ears. The people want a king for themselves. And Samuel, as he's talking with the people, say, we want to be like the other nations. Give us a king. We want a king. And I found that to be so interesting because this isn't just a political statement. This is a theological statement. The people decided God was no longer worth following. They needed a person. They wanted the model that the other nations had. They didn't want God as their king anymore. And interestingly enough, God decides to accommodate their request and prepare the anointing of a king. Does anybody else find that interesting? God had a way of doing it, but kind of met humanity halfway. Does anybody else find that kind of interesting? Like, God had a plan. I think that shows us that God's plan, it will never be thwarted, but he might allow us we can mess it up a little bit, but he still is working it out. So what happens is he comes in, and then there's this nomination of essentially by God for a man that he would find that would look like a king. God would highlight him. And eventually from the tribe of Benjamin, this tiny little, the smallest of all the tribes, this man named Saul kind of catches Samuel's eye as they're in this town. And Samuel gets this highlight from the Lord to nominate or to anoint him as king. And so when they anoint him, the scriptures actually go on to expound on, describe him as a foot taller than everybody else, broad shoulders. He looks like a king. He's strong. He looks fit like a warrior. He has all of the outer appearance of a kingly type person. What's interesting that I find is that, and it kind of sets up where we're going to talk tonight, he finds him because Saul and his friend are on the look for their cattle that had gotten out. And on the look, they can't find any of their animals. So Saul and the guy he's with, they essentially say, well, I think Samuel, the seer, the prophet, is in the land. Let's bring him some money. Let's pay him to see if he can prophesy and tell us where all the animals are, trying to take a shortcut to finding his animals. And what do you know? God uses that to bring Saul into Samuel's line of sight, and the rest is history from there. But the shortcut may prove itself to show up again later in his life, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So Harry, I want to throw it to you. We were talking about this, and talking about the idea of taking shortcuts in life, especially when it comes to like a calling from God. And you felt like really strong that there was this instance that you had in your life of navigating possible shortcuts and then ultimately yielding properly to the Lord. So can you just elaborate on that for me?
Yeah, for sure. So when we were kind of like putting together the content for tonight, I was reminded of just honestly my life, my testimony from, I don't know, maybe 11. I knew I was called to ministry. I knew I was called to be a pastor. I knew I was called to lead the next generation of some sort, however that looked. And for years, I would struggle with this idea of desiring the title more than actually being willing to serve the people, right? I wanted to be that person everybody looked up to. I wanted to be that person on the stage. I wanted to have that title, Pastor Harrison. And it took a good long while for me to get to the point where I realized that the only reason you get that title is by actually doing the work. I came to this realization by college. The first year of college, I remember I struggled with this idea of thinking I was better than I actually was. High school, I didn't really struggle with that often. I was too focused on, honestly, girls. But yeah, very nice. But I struggled a lot in college because I actually focused on everything but girls. That I thought I was better than I actually was. I would come to this idea of somebody's preaching, somebody's taking pictures, somebody's doing a video, and I would go, I can do that better than them. I know I can do that when I've never done it before. I just had this pride in me, right? And it took a good while for that to get broken. And by the time it completely got broken, that's when the Lord really said, hey, Harry, you're ready. And it actually came from a couple of my mentors. We were in a meeting, and it's our whole next gen team in college, and we're sitting there, and I just completed this massive task. Nobody asked me to do it. I took it on myself, and I did it with my heart fully into it. And they said in front of everyone, Harry, you are ready to be a pastor now. And at that moment, I was like, no, I'm not. It honestly is. It's the fact that we can sit here and we can look 3 years ahead of time and go, I'm going to be in college. I'm going to succeed in that. I'm going to do amazing things. But you don't know where you're going to be in 3 years. You can say right now, I'm not called to ministry, and next year you could be leading something that's ministry. You could say right now, I don't have the ability to come up here and preach, or I don't have the ability to come up here and lead worship. But in 6 months' time, who knows what God can do within you. I would say the biggest thing that got me from where I was to where I am now is honestly humility. I allowed people to speak into my life and say, bro, you're being prideful, or you should have come up to that altar when we had an altar call. You should have laid that down. Why didn't you do that? And because of that, going, what the heck am I doing? I was able to go, God, I'm your vessel. Use me.
Yeah, that's so good. Because this is a throwback to last week. We see Samuel, he's in service to a guy who is in title a priest and probably isn't a bad guy, but he's seeing debauchery happen in his home. And he's seeing the people of Israel drift. I mean, under Eli's leadership, these are the people that ultimately call for a king instead of God. What kind of leader was Eli being? And Samuel, at all of that, even though he heard the voice of the Lord, got this word when he was young in his sleep, he had every right to kind of flex right in Eli's face and be like, no, you're wrong. I'm going to be the guy. But instead, he tended to the temple. He tended to Eli. He served as if he was serving unto the Lord himself. And I think God sees him. And what I love about that in your story here, because I can relate to that. I didn't just jump right into ministry. There was plenty of years when I was interning here that I would just go and take PT's car and go get it washed and vacuum it out for him just to bless him. Not in a brown nosing way, but in a way of just how can I serve the daily rhythms of my pastor? I know that sounds silly now because none of you have ever taken my car. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I would never trust any of you in my car. But the whole heart behind it was my pastor, he carries the load. He carries everything. How can I just take a little bit off his plate? I can't preach for him. I can't, take those meetings off his plate, but I can take the car wash off his plate. I can vacuum his car. I can, whatever it is. And so when I look at Samuel's life, I think there's something so profound there. And we're going to see it in chapters to come that David is the same way. God can find you in the obscure, in the service, and he can train you even when you don't think you're doing the job. The heart is what's being cultivated.
Yeah, I think even too, we read in 1 Samuel 9:21 through 22, this is after Samuel gets a word from the Lord saying that I'm going to bring someone to you that you are going to appoint king over the Israelites, right? And what it says is, Saul replied, but I am only from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest tribe in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of that tribe. Why are you talking to me like this? Then Samuel brought Saul and his servants into the hall and placed them at the head of the table, honoring them before the 30 special guests. I think what's the point that we want to take away from this is Samuel elevated Saul through his humility. And I think a lot of people, what we can do is we can go, I'm worthy enough to sit at that table. And instead of going, I'm going to wait for them to invite me there, out of respect and honor for those people, we take a chair just willy-nilly. And we go, you know what? I've been here long enough. I've been in this church long enough. I've served. I serve on Sundays. I serve on Wednesdays. I serve in kids. Y'all already know I'm worthy enough if I serve in kids. And I'll tell you right there, you are no more worthy than anybody else. And I'll tell you even further, just because PT and I are up here, we are no more worthy to be up here than any of you guys. The only reason we're up here is because we're humble enough, and I say this humbly, we're humble enough to allow God to elevate us to a position like this. The only way that you guys could get from there to here is through humility. And I think that's the whole point of what we're trying to get to tonight, is that if you take a shortcut, if you don't walk in that humility, if you don't lay things down before the Lord, I would say even if you don't have the realization that I'm going through something, and humbly go to somebody and say, hey, bro, I'm going through something. I'm sinning, or I'm struggling with this addiction. Can you help me get through this? God can't use someone who's not willing to be humble.
It's so good. I want to make this practical and applicable to you guys too, because maybe your highest level of aspiration isn't to ever preach or in a vocational ministry sense, but whatever it may be, maybe it's a spot on your sports team, or it's the position you want to hold in your school, or the job you want to get to. It's whatever you think you are entitled to because you exist. I don't know, whatever you think you achieve up to that point, you think by your own merit, you've earned this. And maybe by the world's standard it is, but like we just saw with the nation of Israel, they used a totally wrong measuring stick. They used the world's measurement and decided they needed a king. And we see that plays out in a terrible way. God's measuring stick on this is not by achievement and by successes, it's by heart posture. And that heart posture positions us for God's advancement, God's acceleration on things. God can promote you to new levels of whatever the call of God is on your life. Not by your earning, but by your posture, by your heart. And here's the hardest part of it all. Heart development grows when no one's looking. Heart posture is developed when no one's looking. Let me apply it to, like, if you play a sport. Every sport has an off season, but between season to season, that off season is just as important as the regular season, because if you waste the off season, you didn't get any stronger, faster, wiser. You didn't learn the game anymore. You didn't get any better. If anything, you may regress because you didn't try, you didn't work out, you didn't apply yourself. So what happens is a player, an athlete that has that mentality, they show up to the next season and say, I've already been this good. I should just be better. Now I should be the starter on my team. Now I should be the MVP. I should make all pro, or whatever it may be. But they didn't cultivate anything in the hidden place. They didn't cultivate anything when the cameras were off or when the lights weren't on. They didn't get up at 4 a.m. and get to the gym. They didn't cultivate it in the secret place. Now, again, this isn't an earning thing, but it is the cultivation of the call of God in your life, whatever that may be, and you might not even know it yet. But the relational intimacy with God is not grown exclusively at church. It's grown in the secret place, and God will come and find you.
Yeah, I'd even say, like, you can't shortcut encounters with God. Let me put it in this way. You can't ask ChatGPT how to have an encounter with God. You have to just seek after God, right? We can ask ChatGPT a bunch of different things. You know what? Let's actually go on there right now. Let's ask ChatGPT. What should we ask Chat? What do you guys think? Here, I'll throw something down. How about write me a 50-piece paper on the Revolutionary War? You guys have done that, right?
I love that you wrote 50 piece.
Hey,
Like papers are in terms of nuggets.
I'm dyslexic, bro. Don't judge me. You guys have done the Revolutionary War, right? Have you guys ever used ChatGPT to make sure your answers are correct?
Cole.
Everybody's such a liar right now. We need to repent afterwards. We need to repent afterwards. Right? What's it saying?
Well, that looks pretty good.
That's better than what I could do. It's probably all spelled right, too.
And it's a 50 piece.
Right. Hey, that's okay. That's okay.
Do you think what do you think it meant by 50 piece? Is it writing 50 pages or is it like 50 paragraphs?
I think it's 50 paragraphs,
Yeah, right, 50 topics.
50 topics. But you guys can see the point behind it. Like, look at all of that it's creating. It's doing the work for you. You have no input. And what did I do? I gave it 7 words. Let's do another one, right? Write me a text apologizing to my mom for not washing the dishes. How many of you guys don't wash the dishes? Right.
Lies. You sit on a throne of lies.
Right. So chat just wrote this whole thing for me, right? It's not sincere. I didn't actually seek any amount of apology. It's not a real apology. Even if I text it to her and she goes, "Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that." I know in my heart that it was not intentional, right? If Saul was going before Samuel and he was prideful, do you guys think that he would have gone, "Oh God, this is definitely the king that you want"? He probably would have kept looking for the one that God actually wanted because he knew that Saul wasn't intentional about what he was seeking. Like, the reason that they encountered each other is because Saul was intentionally seeking after animals that were his dad's. Like, he had no obligation to do it. They got lost, and he goes, "I'm going to take my servant, and we're going to go, and we're going to look for these animals that got lost," right? If he asked ChatGPT to do it, do you think he would have become the king? If we ask the Lord to write messages for us to preach to you guys, would you guys feel like we love you enough to actually take the time to study, create the content, make videos like that where I put it in ChatGPT? I don't think you guys would think that we actually love you, but we do. That's why we are here. That's what we're doing, exactly what we're doing.
Absolutely. Typically, what this shortcut often represents is impatience. Shortcuts mean I'm not willing to do the full measure, so what's the quickest way from here to there, from where I'm at to the finish line? And impatience is almost always a faith problem in disguise. Let me say that again. Impatience is almost always a faith problem in disguise. We see this all throughout the scriptures, this rushing. They don't want to wait on God's best timing. They don't want to wait on what God is ultimately doing. And even though they have evidence upon evidence upon evidence of God's faithfulness, he literally opened seas. He provided food from nothing. He provided water springing out of a rock. There's so many evidences of God's faithfulness to the people at this time, but still their faith ran short because they just want it a little bit faster. Waiting is hard because it feels passive. We're all about that action. We just want to go, 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 do, do, do. And waiting can feel passive, but waiting on God is often the most active form of trust you can walk in. That's why, like, when we're singing today and we're praying over each other, we're not waiting with our hands in our pockets saying, "Man, I hope God does it." Waiting is sometimes on your knees in prayer saying, "God, I'm calling on you because I know you can and you will." So my waiting is anything but passive. It is action, leaning forward, faith forward, and it's moving forward, taking territory from what the enemy's doing. Later, what we're going to see is that Saul actually takes a shortcut in his leadership once he's already established as king, and it didn't speed up God's plan like he thought it would. It ended up disqualifying him entirely from the ability to walk out God's plan in his life. So now what we have to do is do an internal audit. You guys ready for this? Why do we get impatient? Why do we lack faith? Why do we want things now, and why do we not want to put the work in? because we haven't allowed the process of our character to be developed. We often see, and maybe you guys have had this, that under pressure in your life, you end up doing something you really didn't mean to do. You end up saying something you didn't mean to say. Or maybe you end up saying more than what you should have said because it's what you were thinking, but now it just came out. I am the worst at that. If Bev was in the room, she's homesick right now, but I am so bad at this that I will have a bunch of thoughts and I will be pretty good about what thoughts get shared until it just adds up. And then I say something and Bev's like, oh, that's how you felt about that too, and that too, and that too. I'm like, yeah, crap. Okay. But what that demonstrates in me is that I didn't actually let go of those things. I didn't actually forgive in those places. There was a character deficiency that the pressure didn't create, the pressure brought forth, the pressure showed. The cracks in the pipes, if you're thinking about plumbing, cracks in the pipes don't come because of pressure. They show up because pressure is going through them. So it's just a revealer of the character flaws. So Harry, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. Have you ever experienced that in your life where maybe under pressure something came out of you, or maybe a situation where your character kind of got tested, and maybe there was even time you did it well that your character had to get tested?
Yeah. Honestly, what I would say the biggest character testing that I have ever encountered is the ministry that I was a part of. We would put on a conference, and you'd get a portfolio and you'd do all these tasks, and it's amazing to see it all come together. But the process for it to get to that point is the worst thing in the whole entire world. It's a lot of work. Your head hurts. It's late hours, long days, whatever you want to say, right? And I remember some instances where I'm older. I know a little bit more of how things work, and you get a first time into college, it's their first conference, and they ruin a lot of stuff. At that moment, I have two choices. I can either blow up and I can make it horrible for everybody, or I can breathe and I can assess the problem and we can take it on together. And I will tell you, out of the 4 years that I put on that conference, there was 1 year that I actually did it correct. The 3 other years I did not. The 3 other years I would blow up at people, and then I would have to humble myself, or I'd get humbled and then apologize. And it's a process. Don't think that you're going to get it right every single time right away. I took this on a lot when I was younger, where I would beat myself up when I made mistakes. I would get very frustrated when I would do something that wasn't right. I hurt somebody's feelings, or my mentors and my leaders, they were disappointed in me for something that I did, and I would really beat myself up about it. But now looking at it, if you are doing everything right in your life right now, I don't think you're actually doing anything right at all, because you have to make mistakes for you to know what's right and wrong. If everything was perfect and everything was right all the time, there would be no need for us to come to church, because it would be just like it was in the garden. It would be right before sin, all of that. Everything's perfect. The reason right now that we come to church, that we do this, that we learn about this stuff, is because there's good and there's bad. And if you're not making bad decisions, if you're not doing things that aren't right, and then going, I did that wrong, and reacting to it and changing your mind or repenting of whatever you did, at that point, then you can go, okay, I know what I got to do. I know it's right now.
Yeah, that's so good. And we see Saul actually work through this process. As you guys will read up to today in our reading plan, we've gotten up to chapter 10. And over the next couple of days, we're going to see Saul walk out similar situations here, where Saul gets named as king. He's brought before all of Israel, and there's this, great celebration. Then he's immediately thrust into a leadership role of having to take on major opposing armies, the Ammonites, the Philistines, and he has to go and present himself as a leader. And he actually does very well. God's hand is on him, and he gets this assignment, especially he has to go and take on the Ammonites, and God gives him this clear instruction to not take anything from them, just to completely win the battle, completely eradicate them. Don't take any of their stuff. Just win the war. And Saul, who's now got a little wind in his sails, he's got a little accolade, got a little praise from people. People are chanting, Saul, 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 because he's the man now. He goes, and rather than obeying God's word, he goes into this battle against the Ammonites, and he decides, well, they got some pretty good cattle. I'll take the best of the cattle. I'll take the best of their slaves, the best of their women. I'll take their gods, their idols. And then I'm going to make a mockery of their God in this prophet Agag. I'm going to take him too.